I would like to start asking you if you remember what was the first film with and directed by Stroheim that you ever watched.
It was probably, if it was the first film that he was in, it might have been Sunset Boulevard. I'm just guessing. And if it was the first film he directed, it was probably Greed.
Okay. What was the first impressions that his performance and his directing made in you?
Well, I think it was almost like his vision, I would say, which had an awful lot to do with. I started out as a fiction writer, and I was very much invested in novels, and so to me there was something very novelistic about his way of making films that really appealed to me.
Okay. I thought it was curious because you were here some months ago presenting movies of Orson Welles.
Yes.
And now Stroheim, two directors that their movies were kind of damaged by the studios.
Yes.
Do you think there was a kind of connection about them, about their cinema?
Well, Welles was very fond. I mean, they were friends.
Okay.
And Welles was very fond of Stroheim, actually. And interestingly enough, Welles somehow figured out or knew that Stroheim was Jewish and even mentioned it in interviews before Stroheim was still alive, although in French, not in, at least the one I read, he said he described the art of Stroheim as Jewish Baroque, which I thought was really interesting, which for me also describes perfectly the films of Elaine May, yes. Who I think is Stroheim-like in certain ways. In many ways, actually, which is kind of interesting. Like what I find is somehow, I don't know why I think this is Jewish, but in both Stroheim and Elaine May, you can say all the characters are monsters and the writer-director loves them all. I think that's true in both Elaine May and
Do you
Von
think
Stroheim.
that is a certain connection between, I don't know, Walter Matthau's character in the most famous Elaine May movie, I don't remember the title.
A New Leaf.
And the kind of evilish but classy persona that Stroheim had in his movies and the movies of...
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't even thought of that parallel, but there are many other parallels, including yes. like the one between, say, Greed and Mikey and Nicky. Yes. And between the Heartbreak Kid and Foolish Wives, for example.
There are kind of various connections. That's interesting. I was thinking also. I wanted to ask if that Jewish Baroque-ish sense was the most fascinating thing of Stroheim's cinema for you, or was it something else?
No, because I didn't identify it as such back then, and in fact, when I first discovered him, I don't even know if maybe I knew then that because one of the first articles I read was about the discovery of his birth certificate and all of this, that he had been Jewish, but no, that was not it was, again, it was the novelistic aspect that fascinated me, I think. Okay,
the most fascinating thing. What do you think of the idea of having live music in the screenings? I mean, it's not a very usual thing these days. Have this sort of event about the films and have the music and the live music.
I prefer it with music, at least if the music is good.
If it fits the movie. Right?
Yeah, right. Because I mean, there are times when I've seen, music that can be harmful if it's not as sensitive. But one plan that's hopefully going to maybe realized eventually here, after I leave, like this spring, is a few years ago in Bologna. I saw Stroheim's Merry Widow with a new score written by a wonderful Dutch composer, a woman named Maud Nielsen, and who conducted. And there's a plan that they're working on to try to see if they could bring that to here. But unfortunately, in fact, the original plan was hopefully to be the same week I was here, but they weren't able to do that. But to me, that's really, it did wonderful things to enhance The Merry Widow, which I like anyway, but I think it's a greater film when one
Yes, I think that it's a kind of a thing that happens sometimes with some early sound films. I was thinking of the Philip Glass score for Dracula of Todd Browning's Dracula.
I have problems with that because of their historical problems. Because Philip Glass, that kind of accompaniment doesn't belong to the period.
Yes.
And I think, to me, one thing that's very delicate question about musical accompaniments for silent films is the music becomes a kind of film criticism in a way, that it's a particular interpretation of the film.
Yes.
And it can be one that adds and one that subtracts. And for me, the problem with something like Philip Glass, who I sometimes I like Philip Glass's music, but not his film scores.
Okay.
Usually, including his own film scores when he's done them, because, well, they take me out of the period, first of all, and that
smells too modern, right, for the movies in question.
It seems to me, and that's because I've seen those things are very popular with young audiences. Like I once saw Podofkin's Mother with this kind of industrial music score, and
or that Giorgio Moroder's version of Metropolis.
Yeah, that too. I have problems with all of those things because they don't really they don't respect history enough for me.
Okay. There are some times I can't imagine some silent films without any other score, even if it's a score that respects the movie. Like I can't imagine The Kid from Chaplin without that particular score he made in the second version.
Oh.
I think it's a very powerful soundtrack, even if it is not for the original one or for the original release.
Well, yeah, I think one thing that important part of my education in film came from living in Paris for 5 years and going to the Cinemateca.
Yes.
But Langlois never had musical accompaniments to silent films, and there was not even a piano there. And he also did not believe in even intertitles, so he cut out intertitles, which is crazy because you can't even follow the plots in certain cases. But he literally would eliminate the intertitles from a lot of films.
That's kind of that's strange. I was talking with Pedro now when I was waiting that one time, I think 1 or 2 years ago, I went here to the Cinemateca and watched Sunrise, and I was surprised because the movie was without any soundtrack, and that soundtrack means so many things to me.
Me too, actually. I love that soundtrack.
I didn't know what happened. I thought that it was just too silent for a silent movie.
No, I think with Sunrise, actually, that soundtrack that was prepared, for the release, I think is, to me, an essential part of the film.
Yes, that's right. Moving on to another themes. These 5 films trace a good portrait about Stroheim's vision and life. But did you want to? I correct what I was saying. Did you think that they are still relevant today for our too modern society?
Oh, I think it's absolutely. I mean, I've said this before, but I actually think Stroheim understands people better than
people themselves.
Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg.
Right. It's another way to show things, right? It's not an Indiana Jones. I think he didn't want to make.
No, but I mean, but also to me, it's not. I mean, in other words, if you compare it to Raging Bull, I think.
Okay.
For example, I actually think that Stroheim has a more complex, emotionally complex view of what people are.
Yes, but there are different people from different
eras.
Eras, yes,
well, right.
environments.
I also, one of the things that I find very interesting in Stroheim that fascinates me, and it's also a characteristic with Wells, is that autocriticism. Okay. That all of his films are autocritiques.
Yes.
They're autobiographical and they're autocritical. And that fascinates me. And, and also, I think that's an important element of my own writing, because I feel like when I write that way, and it's that they're self-interrogations in a certain way.
I thought funny that you were talking about your own self-criticism.
Yeah.
I wanted to make this question not now, but if we are talking about that, was there any movie that when you review it on the Chicago Reader and then revisited years later, you thought, well, I didn't receive this movie as good as it needed, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was a film of Verhoeven, the one with Sharon Stone. What's it called?
The Basic Instinct?
Yeah, Basic Instinct. That was a film I gave a very negative review to, and I like it very much now.
You are a Verhoeven fan, no?
What?
You are a Verhoeven fan, no?
Big Verhoeven fan.
From you watch L?
Yeah, it's not one of my favorite stuff.
Okay, yes, I agree with you. I think it's, I don't like the expression, but it's a little bit overrated.
Yeah, I think so.
What was the movie that awakened you for cinema as an art and not just as a way to spend time with friends or family?
I think, like most people, Citizen Kane.
Okay. You still think it's the greatest film of all time?
No.
No? You're not like many people that every year in those
no,
lists.
It's not. But that was the film that introduced me to the idea of a film. And I guess also City Lights of Chaplin.
Yes, that's a very nice choice.
Which I saw even when I was still younger, quite young actually. I think I was 7 years old when I saw it the first time.
That made you cry for hours?
Well, I don't remember that, but it moved me a lot, yeah.
How do you look to the future of film criticism? I mean, we have so many media now, we have so many ways to express an opinion with more or less knowledge of the subject. How do you...
Well, I actually think that I've mentioned this before, that I think that film going is just as social an activity as it was before, but it's social in a different way. And it's social because when we see a film, we're less likely to see it with other people, but we're more likely to discuss it with more people afterwards through the internet.
Yes.
And so I think it becomes social that way. And of course that's very important regarding my own website, because I'm very pleased by the fact that, for example, probably more than half of the people who go visit my website are not from the United States. Yeah. And, which has happened more and more that way. And so I actually like to think that I don't believe in the usual distinctions that are made between professional and non-professional reviewers, because what they mean by professional means institutional backing, whether it's from academia or from, important magazines or newspapers. And I actually think that there are people who don't have institutional backing who know more about cinema than some people who do have institutional backing.
Yes.
So I don't think a degree is a guarantee of anything. I don't think writing for the New York Times or, Time Magazine or anything is a guarantee of anything. So I actually think that there's more good material on the internet than there was before, but there's also more bad material. So it becomes a little harder maybe to navigate, but I don't think that's necessarily it's a bad situation for people who are lazy, but it's a good situation for people who are more creative and focused.
And want their voices to be listened for someone, even if it's just one person. Moving on to other things, then I think that it's important. What you know about Portuguese cinema, more than Pedro Costa and Manuel de Oliveira?
Well, I've seen Miguel Gomez and, I've seen some other Portuguese films, but I don't think of Portuguese cinema as a thing in itself. I think just of occasional films, I see. So it's not a topic that
But there is
have something to say about.
Any Portuguese film that fascinates you?
I'm sure there are some, but there aren't any that that come to mind at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want you to understand that I was talking about Portuguese films as a genre or something like that. I was just curious because there are some directors that fortunately have been exhibited all around the world.
I can mention one actually that I was actually helped to give a prize to, a recent film, John From. I like that quite a lot.
Okay.
And you know, I was on a jury that gave it a prize just last year.
Okay. That was a very good movie.
Yeah.
What is for you the movie the movie that will characterize the Trump era?
Oh God. Citizen Kane.
Yes, because it is also the favorite film of Trump.
Donald Trump.
That makes sense.
And I actually wrote about this. He made some really comments about it that are quite stupid, but are still revealing about him, you know.
Yes, it's a movie that reveals many things about his devil personality.
They said if you could say one thing to Charles Foster Kane, what would you say? Is if I get another wife. That was his advice.
It's his cinephile way talking. Is there any future for the American industry beyond the films made just considering some marketing tests?
Except, I'm sorry,
I repeat, is there any future for the American industry of cinema beyond the blockbusters that are made considering just some marketing tests?
Well, it seems like there might be, because if you look at the Oscar nominations, there aren't any blockbusters. There are films like Moonlight, La La Land.
But you like those films?
Those two, yes. I don't like Manchester by the Sea.
Okay.
But I like Margaret, for example, very much, which is not really a blockbuster either.
Yes.
No, I mean, I think the point is that they might be overrated some, perhaps both La La Land and maybe even Moonlight, but at the same time, I think they're definitely not blockbusters, they're not mainstream films. Probably I even think there's a way you could probably say that their popularity is an impartial, maybe unconscious reaction against Trump and what he represents, you know, in some ways. So I don't, you know, I'm not good at predicting anything, you know, and I'm not even interested in business.
Yes.
So I don't know about what the future of, you know, millionaires' bank accounts, nor do I care. But I do think that there's a lot of other interesting things going on in film.
Yes, not just in America, but...
Yeah, I mean, in Patterson, of course, is another example of something that's important that doesn't... Even though Jim Jarmusch is a member of the Academy, actually.
And curiously, his movie was not nominated for anything.
It's not curious at all.
No?
He's not part of that tribe.
Okay.
You know, it's really... it's about...
No, I think that it's not. It wouldn't be the first time that a movie from a member of the Academy was nominated for something.
Yeah.
Even if it was of the style of movies that the Academy usually likes.
Yeah, but somehow, even the fact of him being a member of the Academy wouldn't even matter. I just don't think he's, you know. I mean, I don't understand exactly how it works, but all I can say is that the whole idea of Jim Jarmusch getting nominated for any of his films getting any nominations would be very surprising to me.
Okay. That's a good answer for a vague question. Patterson, La La Land, Moonlight. You were talking about John From. Is there any other recent movie that caught your attention?
Well, sure. There have been a lot of films that I've liked. I mean, just going back a little bit, I like Son of Saul very much. Yes. I'm just trying to think. Sometimes I don't, you know,
You watch so many movies that...
And I watch a lot of old films too. So, and in a way, they're part of my present. So I don't think about it always in terms of, you know, like what the most current.
Yes.
Necessarily.
But Son of Saul was another important movie from, I don't know, 2015, 16?
Yeah.
That's fun. Moving to another subject, I think you are still member of the jury of Il Cinema Retrovato about
DVDs.
choosing the DVDs of the year. In this era of streaming, of watching movies anywhere, anytime, in any device, do you think they still matter to people? There are enough collectors to the majority of the common people don't think that they were gone, or they don't?
Well, I haven't made any statistical study of this.
I just didn't want to have a statistical answer. I wanted to know if for you they are still important.
Oh, of course, it's still important.
And because you made some commentaries for DVDs?
Yes, but almost never solo. I've only ever done one by myself. It's always with other people, because I don't like the idea of being the expert. I like the idea of having a dialogue with someone else, so that's what I usually do.
That's curious, but in this era of so many things happening, the attitude of go home and put the DVD on the driver and sit and watch it, it's kind of I don't know, but looking to my generation, many people don't do it anymore. They're just watching the cell phone and go on in the subway, or I don't know.
It seems to me that's their loss. I mean, I think because it's well, all I can say is I grew up with it as a theatrical experience, and even if you're recreating just certain aspects of the theatrical experience at your home or wherever you are, to me that's still important. But I don't know, maybe for other people, if it's not, all I can say is I don't know what they gain from doing that, except convenience. I'll tell you one thing that impressed me a lot. When I went to the Melbourne International Film Festival last August, which I liked very much, I was really impressed by the fact that at all the screenings I went to, not once did I see one person looking at their phone during the screening. That was really impressive to me. And that to me defined the festival as a serious festival.
I read some weeks ago about, I think it's a theater in London, which allows people to enter and having the cell phone in watching the movie. I think that's insane, right? I mean, the theater itself allows people to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's one of the reasons why it's ironically why I prefer to see films at home, is because if I go to see, even not as often at press screenings, but some press screenings too, you're constantly being distracted by the person next to you, texting or checking emails.
They can't get out of real life just for 2 hours and watching. That's insane for me. I wanted to end this little chat returning to Eric Von Stroheim.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Trump. I found some Trumpist aspects in the Stroheim persona, don't you think? Not the real person, but the character.
Fictional character.
Yes.
Yeah. Although one thing that's interesting is that Stroheim, at least I forgot this until I was rereading the biographies. Stroheim was very short.
Yes.
Trump is not short. Hitler was short, though. But the other thing that it seems to me that is really not appropriate to compare that persona is that Trump is totally undisciplined.
Yes.
And the character that Stroheim played was always very disciplined.
Yes. It has a classy way to be evil.
Yeah, I mean,
an elegant way.
Trump is a slob.
Yes.
I mean, in every sense of the word. And whatever you could say about the Stroheim's villains, they were never slobs.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, Mr. Rosenbaum, that's it. Thank you very much.